Yay. Okay. Welcome to Boss Up Goddess. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I interview trailblazing women who share their wisdom to help us all live bigger, better, and bolder. The woman you're about to meet is doing exactly that. She is on a very big mission to help women navigate the most difficult thing outside of death, and that is divorce. Rhonda Noordyk created the Women's Financial Wellness Center, and she hosts the podcast Divorce Conversations for Women to help them navigate all the scary, terrifying, difficult, overwhelming elements of divorce. Or if you're contemplating divorce, she helps us with that as well. So, welcome, Rhonda Noordyk.
Hey, thank you so much for having me, Elizabeth. I'm so glad to be here.
Thank you. And I want to say thank you for having me as a guest on your show because I was able to talk about my divorce experience, and that's why your message resonates. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I'm so glad you were able to share.
Thank you. So I would like you to please start with telling us how you got the idea for the Women's Financial Wellness Center and what inspired this mission to help women get through divorce.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, right? Because you always have those moments, right? Where I think whether we're, going about our day-to-day stuff or we put ourselves in a different environment where we have the opportunity to find some space where we can be thinking about, what is it that I want for my business? What do I want to be able to do more intentionally? And that's what happened. Back in 2014, I was sitting in my office and thought, gosh, what do I want my business to look like, 5 years from now?
Mhm.
And I knew that if I stayed the course, it would be because I was in the financial industry, more assets, more clients, more revenue. But I didn't feel like I was actually doing what I really wanted to be doing, which was helping women navigate through the financial aspects, particularly around divorce. And
Mhm.
the reason for that was because women were coming into my office saying, Rhonda, I'm so frustrated. I'm so overwhelmed. My attorney isn't calling me back. I don't know what questions to ask. I'm feeling overwhelmed about the finances. I feel shameful because I didn't take more of an interest in the finances. And so what we did was we actually did a focus group with a bunch of women that were going through divorce and said, what's working? What's not? What do you want? What do you wish was, done differently? And after 3 hours and a lot of Kleenex later, I I left and I'm like, oh darn it, I'm gonna help these women. Like, I don't know how, but I'm gonna help them.
Uh-huh.
And that was really where the seed got planted. And so in 2014, I decided to leave the financial industry and open up the Women's Financial Wellness Center
Mhm.
and create a model that was independent of financial product sales that would really help women navigate through all of the pieces around divorce.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and it was pretty amazing because after you hit that 5 year mark and you look back and you're like, that's the question I asked myself 5 years ago. And here I am.
Wow.
Right. And am I doing what I had intended to do when I left? And did it meet or exceed my expectations?
Mhm.
And I have to be honest, it exceeded my expectations. I saw, the more we worked with women, the more need we saw. The more we worked
Mhm.
with women, the more need we saw.
Mhm.
And so yeah, here we are 6 years later, helping women all over the country navigate through, the big D.
Yes, yes, I love it. I love your website because it talks about how you have this sort of mentoring program where you invite women from different areas, such as car dealers, bankers, real estate agents, who are there to help women learn about these areas that perhaps their husband might have handled and they were not savvy in it, the women weren't. So now you can teach them how to be independent and empowered financially. So, can you talk about how that works? And also, your metaphor of the queen on the chessboard.
Yes, of course. Well, I think the formula really for helping women become independent is it's the knowledge plus the experience that helps women have that confidence, right? It's never that women aren't smart enough to handle the financial aspect, and it certainly isn't that they can't make good decisions, but they need the knowledge, right? I always say the knowledge without the experience is just theory. And if we have the experience without the knowledge, it's trial and error, and we don't want to do that.
No.
It never usually works.
Yeah.
But when we get those two things working together in tandem, that's where the confidence happens. And so
Mm.
women can look at the divorce process as an opportunity for them to be able to be empowered,
Yes,
for
yes,
them
yes,
to ask
yes.
good questions, right? And come out of it stronger and more confident, especially around money, than they did going into it.
Yes. Excellent.
So,
So marriages end in a 50% divorce rate, and I read that there was a 34% spike in divorces at the start of the pandemic. So the need is all the more imperative to provide this guidance. So
yes.
I love how you're also helping women who are just contemplating the idea. How
Yeah.
does that work?
So, a lot of times, right, women are thinking about divorce many months, many years before they actually pull the trigger, right? Because they're
Mhm.
afraid and they don't know where to start and they're overwhelmed. And so the contemplation stage is a really um, delicate place because, women have to be ready to make that decision, right? It's never my job to push them to make the decision. It's just we're here when they're ready to make the decision. But there are some things that we've put in place to be able to help them navigate through. One of which you mentioned earlier was the podcast and some of our blog articles. But then also, we have a course called Divorce Planning for Women, and it's 8 weeks, and it's really intended to take them through. How do you interview an attorney? What kinds of financial things do you need to be looking at?
Mhm.
What are the different processes for divorce? So at least they can feel like they're taking a baby step forward and getting
Mm.
some stuff in order before they decide if and when they want to file. And then when they're ready, certainly, right, if they're looking for some direction and guidance, we certainly can help them. And at that point, then we would help them one-on-one and help them interview attorneys, help them make sure that they're putting together a budget and gathering all their financial documents. So we are really that financial expert that not only helps them navigate through the process, but we're also using micro moments to say, hey, do you know what you have? No, I have this statement. I'm like, can we just take a couple minutes and let me just share with you a little bit about this? And they've been super grateful because I don't know that like opening the fire hose at that point is really like going to be the most effective,
Yeah.
but we use these little micro moments to help them.
Mhm.
And kind of to your question earlier about, hey, how did we come up with the chess piece, or
Mhm.
what was the idea behind that? So really what happened was we had launched the business in 2014 and had a very meaningful logo and color scheme, and it worked for the time. And then I was working with a couple people that I really respect, PR experts, and the person who actually created my initial website. And they said, hey, two different conversations over 2 different days. And they said, Rhonda, I think you're at a point where it's time to rebrand. And I'm like, what? No, I love my.
Mhm.
Then they said, well, here's the thing. You're at a different point where, yes, you're providing support, but your business has evolved to where you're actually more of a financial advocate for women. You're in negotiations. You're a certified divorce financial analyst. You can be an expert witness. Like there's a different level of support now that you're able to give to women. And so as we were brainstorming, the thing that really kept coming up was this queen chess piece.
Mhm.
And I don't play chess. So I was like, okay, well, tell me why you think that's a good idea. And and they said, Rhonda, the queen is the most powerful piece on the board.
Ooh.
Most powerful piece on the board. And she can move anywhere she wants
Oh,
if
I
she
love it.
knows, if she knows that she has the power.
Ooh, I have chills. That's awesome. Love that.
So we just want to help women stay 3 steps ahead in
Uh-huh.
the process. Always know what's going on. Always have a sense of what's next, right? And that they have a strategy,
Mhm.
because the divorce process does not in and of itself provide a strategy. People are like, what's going on? I'm not sure. Like, unless they have somebody who knows that process and is proactively communicating those things,
Mhm.
they're not going to necessarily know what's next.
Mhm. Mhm.
And if they don't know what's next, then how do they stay 3 steps ahead,
Yeah.
in that
Mhm.
process? So it's been a really powerful metaphor.
I love that. Do you have a success story? You don't have to name names, but maybe a woman who came to you clueless, terrified, and just went through your process and stepped out. Maybe she bought a house, maybe she started her business, that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I've got a couple. So the one that I'm thinking about, she's actually not officially through the process yet. But the reason that I want to share this one is because she came to us, she'd been married for about 20 years, and her husband handled a lot of the finances, and she trusted him. Like,
Mhm,
she trusted that he was doing the right thing. And it wasn't that he was necessarily doing anything shady, right? He wasn't doing anything illegal. He really, truly, I believe at his core, had his family's best interest in mind.
mhm.
But how that manifested itself was control. So
Oh,
controlling the spending, always wanting to know where the money went. Like she always felt like she had to justify. And they were able to save a decent amount of money, but he wanted to utilize the mediation process
mhm,
for their divorce.
mhm.
And the reason he wanted to do that is because he's a person that I would say spreadsheets are his love language. So he comes
Oh
in with
my
like
gosh.
spreadsheets everywhere. And it's like he'd so convinced himself that what he thought should happen because he'd run all the numbers back and forth. It's just like, oh my gosh. Oh, almost to, I mean, so detailed that it was really creating like so much chaos and confusion. And and I had the opportunity to be part of some of those conversations. And I think recently, the reason that it was so important for us to be part of that was because she said to me, Rhonda, when I first hired you, I was really looking at somebody who could just kind of like affirm that what my husband was thinking was a good idea.
Uh-huh.
And what I realized was the more that we got into it, his plan was never a good idea.
My gosh. Rhonda, can you explain mediation versus going to court for a divorce,
Yeah. So
please?
mediation is where you have a neutral third party, usually an attorney, who will facilitate conversation. And they can share like, hey, here's what the law would say, right? Here's what the law says about,
Mhm,
these different issues, property division, maintenance or alimony, child support, etc. But they're not
mhm,
able to give advice. So people go into these types of situations thinking that they're going to have somebody that's going to walk them through the process when really that's not the case. So I think people get disenchanted with that process. And a lot of times the guys will use that, hey, we should do mediation because it's going to be easier, faster, cheaper, simpler,
oh.
because their wife isn't going to have an advocate.
Uh-huh.
So, it's
Wow.
powerful to have those, difficult conversations. And the thing that was interesting about this client was when she told her husband, hey, we hired the Women's Financial Wellness Center, he went onto the website and of course, he's like, I can't believe it. You hired a certified divorce financial analyst, like, blah, blah. He was just getting all bent out of shape. And he's like, she hates men. She probably hates men. And it's like, no, I don't hate men, but I also don't want your wife to get steamrolled in the process.
Oh my goodness, yes.
you know
Oh.
so we were sitting, I had the opportunity to actually be in mediation. I got the approval to be in there, and he was like railing on her, he was talking down to her, and the mediator wasn't saying anything, and finally I'm like, that's enough. Like, you don't get to just punch, she's not a punching bag, right, on how you get to degrade her earning capacity or what. Like, no, this is a smart,
Mhm.
intelligent, well-educated woman who was afraid to rock the boat because she didn't want to upset him.
Mhm.
And I think the message that I've really been wrestling with a lot lately is, I think women go into these situations saying, well, I really want it to be amicable. The problem is that amicable means that there aren't serious disagreements. Well,
Mhm.
you're going through divorce.
Mhm.
There are going to be disagreements.
Wow. Yes,
Right?
yes,
Like,
yes. But you know what? That's yes, Rhonda, yes. And that's our programming as women. We don't want conflict. We don't want confrontation, but that's what a divorce is. And there's a reason that they're getting the divorce.
right.
So I'm so glad you're there. So what do you do?
Yeah. So, I mean, ultimately, it's helping women, have that voice and
Mhm.
ask the right questions So ultimately they get the right answers. And being that solid, calm, firm, steady person, right, throughout the process for them when they feel like, okay, I need your strength to be able to, I need to borrow some strength, right,
Uh-huh.
to be able to stand firm on this topic because if I back down, right, there's going to be a long-term impact
Mm-hmm.
financially. And a lot of times people will say, well, Rhonda, if you're helping women and you're moving the needle, and we recently pulled 8 of our clients, and I said, okay, I'm going to put dollars and cents to the impact that our involvement in their situations had. And of those 8, we were able to move the needle $5.2 million.
What does that mean?
So that basically means that they were able to get that additional money somehow, right, on their side of the spreadsheet,
Oh my gosh.
whether it was
Wow.
through a business valuation, through cash, through equity in a home, through retirement, assets, through whatever, right? Because what happens a lot of times is when you don't know what questions to ask. No, the other person isn't going to tell you, right? If we're thinking about the chess game, they're not going to tell you their moves. They're not going to tell you, you should have moved diagonal, right? Like they're
Mm-hmm.
not. So if you
Mm-hmm.
don't know, they're going to say, sweet, they didn't ask the question and we're not going to tell them.
Wow. And
So
your motto is you don't know what you don't know,
it's
right?
true. It's a big deal. And so a lot of times people will say, well, Rhonda, if you move the needle $5.2 million, does that mean that, the guys are left, living in a cardboard box on the street? And the answer is no. Like we're moving it back to center where it should have been in the first place.
Ooh, wow. Wow. Thank goodness that you're there for them.
I know it's
Oh my
so,
gosh.
and I think of all the work we do, Elizabeth, I think the biggest thing that really, like I can deal with the emotional part of the divorce process. I don't have the crying, the being upset, the being frustrated, like I get all that. That I can navigate through. There's a couple things, the disrespecting of me or my team, that's kind of a given, right? But the other thing is for women that don't see the value in having the right team and are
Mhm.
almost so I don't know, like they're so hopeful and so optimistic or so just unwilling to look at reality that it just really can impact their overall, situation. And
What's an
so
example of not wanting to look at reality?
I talked to a woman the other day and she said, Rhonda, everything right now is pretty amicable. And I'm like, of course it is because you haven't filed.
Oh my gosh.
And she's like, well, what if we could do this without attorneys? And I'm like, okay, so you've been married like over 10 years, you have 4 young kids, and you're a stay-at-home mom. I'm thinking that's not a good idea.
That's all fear talking. Fear of the unknown, fear of, oh my gosh. So what did you say?
I said, well, you have some options, right? You can decide how you want this to go. Either you decide that you're going to be your own attorney in this process, right? And when are you going to have time to do those things? Not to mention like, what not knowing what you don't know kind of thing. But you're going to have to decide how you want this to be. I said, but you know what? There's so many women that we could be proactive. Like we don't have to wait until everything is so chaotic till we take action. I'm like, there's no question it's going to be challenging. The question is, do you want it to be a better process? Do you want to have a better outcome? And if the answer to those questions are yes, then you need to get the right people on your team,
Mhm.
you know? And I said,
Mhm.
and the sooner that we get involved, the better. However, you can hire us later, but the investment is going to be the same. So why not start now? And
Yes.
secondly, we can help you make sure that you're asking the right questions right out of the gate.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it's a challenging situation and I understand that there's fear around it. The other thing I was thinking of too recently was that, women allow the financial aspect of the divorce process, I think, to get in the way.
Mm.
And I think the important message is divorce isn't free. It isn't free.
Wow.
So you have to be willing to invest in, right? You have to be willing to invest in the divorce. And And what does
Wow.
that mean, right? Like I did a summit recently and we were talking about this and I said, there was the a really big movement in the late 70s or early 70s around women being able to take out credit cards and get business loans
Mm-hmm.
without having to have a guy sign off on it,
Oh
a
my gosh.
relative or whatever. And there's times when I talk to women, I'm like, are we still in the early 70s? Because you can get a credit card. You can take out a loan. You can borrow money. Like, and I'm not saying like go crazy, but the divorce isn't free. And so women need to, I think, start looking at it as an investment to make sure that they have the best possible outcome,
Mm-hmm.
and a better process. You know, and don't just go back to, well, I can't afford it because, or I have to get my husband to agree and he doesn't think it's a good idea. Like, no, you're moving in the direction of making bigger decisions in your life, right? And this is
Right.
one step in that direction because the divorce process is probably, well, hopefully going to be less than if you were to purchase a home or a car or some of those other things, right? So if it is, right, it's just a stepping stone for women to get more comfortable and taking out debt.
Mm-hmm.
It's not failure. It's if you go into it acknowledging and being well educated on what you're doing, it can be a short-term solution to help women just navigate, through what's ahead.
Mm-hmm. I love that. It's a mind shift. I never thought of it about it like that. Rhonda, what's your advice to women who leave urgently, didn't have time to make a strategy, don't have savings, and they could even be in danger and they just need to get the divorce done? And maybe they don't have the finances to invest.
It's a tricky one, right? Because I always say, A, we know divorce isn't free.
Mm-hmm.
B, it's sometimes even hard to get the attorneys that they're paying to do a good job. So if you're trying to find a free attorney, well, you get what you pay for, right?
Right.
So different cities will have different, like it's called legal action. And so those are attorneys that agree to offer their services pro bono.
Oh.
So it's an option for women. Again, it certainly has its challenges, and the attorneys are not as available as if you were hiring them. So you kind of like you're kind of a little bit at their mercy of,
Mm-hmm.
you know,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think the other piece of it too is, um, identifying what their income and expenses are. And I mean, women in those situations can be extremely resourceful, right? It's never
Yes.
an easy answer. It's a really challenging spot to be in. And there aren't a ton of free resources for women that are going through divorce.
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm-hmm.
may mean that they need to maybe stay with a family member temporarily until they can kind of get on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
you know, there may be
Mm-hmm.
some programs in their area, but I wouldn't say that there's like a plethora of, of options,
Yeah. Yeah. Unfortunately.
right?
Rhonda, mental health is such an important aspect when you're going through this
Mhm.
divorce. You already talked about the need for women to find their voice and speak up and ask for what they want, and also to have the courage to do what they're doing through the whole process. But what about the mental health aspect? Because there can be so much shame, blame, feeling of failure, terror about the unknown. What am I doing? Where am I going? What's going to happen? What about the kids? So how do you help the women with their mental health through this process?
Yeah, that's a really important part, Elizabeth. I think the one area that I will often encourage women to engage services in is having a counselor or a therapist as part of their team.
Hmm.
Because if they can have somebody who's doing the legal aspect and somebody who's doing the financial and somebody who's doing the emotional, and that team can work together on their behalf, we've really covered all the bases.
Hmm.
So a lot of times, the different therapy practices have different options. Some of them have interns. So the interns will usually have to work for free because they need to get so many hours. So it's a great way for people that maybe don't have insurance or, are in between or whatever, that they need that option. And
Hmm.
then there's the ones that take insurance, so they definitely would want to check on that. And then there's ones that offer private pay. And there's usually a discount rate, like a cash rate I would ask for, like, hey, what's your cash rate? If they don't have insurance and are going to pay for it privately.
Hmm.
So engaging the right people, I think, is important. The other thing that I've seen that has helped women is a couple things. One is journaling,
Mhm.
um, and really finding, there's two ways to do it, right? You can just have one journal that you're, capturing everything.
Right.
Um, but I met a woman a couple years ago, and she suggested was something that she used was, hey, I had a black journal for all of the negative, like I just got to get out all the anger and all the frustration.
Mhm.
And then
Mhm.
colorful one where she was really starting to talk about the positive things, right? And focusing intentionally on the positive. And she purposefully kept those separate
Mm.
because she was really what she was doing was training her mind to be able to separate those.
Wow. Interesting.
So,
I think I would have a red journal for the anger one because
uh,
and like a rainbow for the other one because black is like glamorous and elegant for me and a lot of people, but I love that idea of having separate spaces to write about the different experiences because journaling is such a therapeutic
yeah.
tool. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad you said that, Rhonda.
Yeah, it's a big deal, right? And I think the other piece of it too is, women a lot of times when they're in this spot, they need to be able to have somebody that's going to help them pick their head up and look forward a little bit.
Oh,
Um, so we can help them with that because once they know, like, okay, I'm so overwhelmed, like, hey, okay, here's the next two things that you should be working on, right?
mhm.
And so they've got this great like mental health support where they're helping them, with the financial stuff and then saying, okay, just these next two things, just work on this. We'll work on this,
Yes,
you work on
yes,
that,
yes.
and so it just kind of helps them navigate through that process. And
Mhm.
usually what we see is toward the end of the divorce process, you start to see them standing a little taller,
Oh.
walking a little faster, talking
Oh.
differently. Like that's why the story I was sharing earlier about, the mediation and how frustrating it was that the husband was trying to control. The
Yeah.
biggest win was, I mean, I'm getting these emails now from this my client and she's seeing through.
Oh,
She's seeing
wow.
through and she's like, "You know what? Like I deserve, like and again, it's not she's not asking for something that the law's not going to support, right?
Right,
I mean,
right,
she's
yeah.
asking for things in the normal range."
Uh-huh. I
I was like, "Yes, awesome. Like, yes, you asked for that. Like, absolutely."
Mhm.
So
Oh.
it's just been great and just to see her transformation and and the text message that she sent me the other day that just said thank you for the insight and the wisdom and the patience and helping navigate through and it's like sometimes they just need somebody to come along that's going to help them and guide them, believe in them, be talk kindly to them, right? Like
Oh.
they just need some kindness and
Wow.
and and advocacy, right? I always say we're going to disrupt this whole divorce industry with love, right? Like we're just,
What? Can you say that again? Oh my gosh.
we're going to disrupt the divorce industry with love.
I love that. You know what, Rhonda? I named my divorce the harmonious resolution
Mm,
from the beginning. And when I journaled, I called it that. It wasn't that at all until 18 years later, as I shared on your podcast.
mm,
But that is so powerful. When you speak it, it can happen.
yeah,
Can happen. I love what you're doing so much. It's so needed.
thank you.
I hope you can reach as many women as possible.
Me
And
too.
wow, Rhonda, can you just go back to that thing where you said someone said you must hate men and you don't because you're
I
happily
don't.
married.
I don't hate men. And I don't even hate the husbands of the women we're working with. I get frustrated with them. And they sometimes don't like us because we're actually like, not allowing their plan to go as planned, but we're doing the right thing. And,
Yes. Mhm. I love that, Rhonda. Thank you so much for all that you're doing. Now, where can people find you?
yeah, absolutely. So probably the best way is our website, wfwcdivorce.com. So wfwcdivorce.com. And yeah, we're going to actually be getting ready to launch an app in January. So I'm going to share that just so that when this gets published, people can download it. Um,
Okay.
but it will be a free app and it's called Simple Support.
Okay.
And it will have our really beautiful chess piece as part of the icon.
Uh-huh.
And the reason we did that is because we didn't want to put divorce in there so that if they were downloading it and wanted access to information and resources, it didn't really set off any premature alarms.
I love that. And what can you do on this app?
So the app is going to allow people to get up to date, real live time podcast episodes. So as soon as they get published, they'll be able to see them on there.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with blog articles.
Mm-hmm.
They can book a one-on-one strategy session with our team.
Mm-hmm.
They can have access to our resources so they can check out the profiles of the amazing people that we work with.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to have some other suggestions as far as different apps, parenting apps, um, financial apps to help with the expense part of the divorce process. And as we continue to run across different resources, we'll put those in there.
Mm-hmm.
The app will be free. The only
Wow.
paid component will be there will be a couple courses that
Oh,
are available on there that if people would like to purchase, it's some educational materials and coursework, they can do that through the app. But most of it's going to be for free.
brilliant. I love it. What a gift that you're sharing with women who need it so much.
Thank you.
Wow, Rhonda, you are amazing.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
your
you.
mission is helping so many people. So
Mm,
thank you very much for joining me tonight,
thank
Rhonda.
you. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're going to really help a lot of people on this show. So thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I wish you the best with everything in your new app and all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And thank you for joining us here tonight on Boss Up Goddess. I'm Elizabeth Ann Atkins, and I interview trailblazing women like Rhonda who share their wisdom to help us all live bigger, better, and bolder. If you're finding value in this program, please do like, share, subscribe, comment, and click the notification bell. Meanwhile, remember, you